The Kethvar scout ship had been drifting through the void for 3 standard cycles, its hull scarred by plasma burns and micrometeor impacts. Inside the cramped medical bay, Zarathek lay dying on a biobed that hadn't worked properly since the attack on Kepler Station. Her lupine features, once proud and fierce, were now gaunt with pain and approaching death. The wolf-like alien's silver fur had dulled to an ashen gray, and her breathing came in shallow gasps. The combat stimulants that had kept her alive during the evacuation were finally wearing off, leaving behind the reality of her injuries. Shrapnel from the human supremacist attack had punctured her primary lung and damaged her spine. Without proper medical equipment, she knew her fate was sealed. Zarathek had accepted death long ago. Her pack was gone, scattered to the stellar winds when the extremists had bombed the peace summit. She was the last of her reconnaissance unit, the sole survivor of what should have been a routine diplomatic mission. The irony wasn't lost on her that she would die alone in space, far from the hunting grounds of her homeworld. Her ship's AI had gone silent 2 days ago, its voice circuits damaged beyond repair. The only sounds now were her labored breathing and the distant hum of failing life support systems. She estimated she had perhaps 6 hours before the oxygen recyclers gave out completely. It would be a race between asphyxiation and blood loss. The view screen flickered weakly, showing nothing but empty space and distant stars. No rescue ships. No friendly signals. The human supremacists had made sure of that when they destroyed the communication relays around Kepler Station. Any ships in the area would assume her vessel was debris, not worth investigating. Zarathek closed her amber eyes and tried to remember better times. Pack hunts under the twin moons of Vorthak Prime. The satisfaction of a successful tracking mission. The warmth of her littermates sleeping beside her in the den they'd carved from living rock. Those memories felt like another lifetime now, belonging to someone who hadn't watched her entire unit die in flames. A soft chime from her console interrupted her reverie. Her eyes snapped open, focusing on the proximity alarm with difficulty. Something was approaching her ship. For a moment, hope flared in her chest, but she quickly suppressed it. Hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. More likely, it was salvagers coming to strip her ship for parts. The approaching vessel's signature slowly resolved on her damaged sensors. It was small, sleek, and broadcasting medical transponder codes. A hospital ship. Zarathek's heart sank further. If it was human, they would never help her. The war between their species had been raging for 2 standard years, ever since first contact had gone catastrophically wrong. Humans saw her people as monsters, savage beasts unworthy of civilization. The communication system crackled to life, startling her. A human voice came through the static, speaking in accented but clear galactic standard. "Unknown vessel, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez aboard the medical frigate Hippocrates. We're reading massive system failures and life signs in distress. Do you require assistance?" Zarathek stared at the speaker in disbelief. A human was offering to help her. It had to be a trick, some kind of trap. Perhaps they wanted to capture her alive for interrogation or worse. She'd heard stories about what humans did to Kethvar prisoners. "I repeat, unknown vessel, we're detecting critical life support failures. Please respond if you can hear this transmission." The voice was female, carrying notes of genuine concern that Zarathek's trained senses could detect even through the poor audio quality. But it made no sense. Why would a human risk themselves to help their enemy? During the war, both sides had standing orders to show no mercy to the other species. Zarathek tried to reach for the communication controls, but her weakened arm barely responded. Her claws scraped uselessly against the console's surface. Even if she wanted to respond, she wasn't sure she had the strength. The effort left her gasping, dark spots dancing at the edges of her vision. "We're going to attempt a docking maneuver," the human voice continued. "If you're conscious in there, please don't be alarmed. We're here to help. Help." The word seemed foreign to Zarathek now. She'd been so focused on dying with dignity that the possibility of rescue hadn't seemed real. But even if this human was genuine, what could they do? Her injuries were beyond field treatment, requiring surgical facilities and blood synthesizers that no small medical ship would carry. The ship shuddered slightly as the human vessel made contact with her docking port. Zarathek heard the mechanical whine of airlocks cycling, followed by the hiss of equalized atmosphere. Heavy footsteps echoed through her ship's corridors, accompanied by the electronic beeping of medical scanners. Multiple hull breaches sealed with emergency foam, a male voice reported. Atmosphere is stable, but O2 levels are dropping fast. I'm reading one life sign, critically weak, located in what looks like a medical bay. Understood, Marcus. Get the emergency kit ready. Zarathek's ears swiveled toward the approaching footsteps despite her weakness. Her nose twitched, picking up unfamiliar scents. Human pheromones mixed with medical antiseptics and recycled ship air. Her instincts screamed at her to prepare for a fight, but her body could barely manage to keep breathing. The medical bay door hissed open, and a figure in a white medical suit stepped through. The human woman was smaller than Zarathek had expected, with dark hair pulled back and intense brown eyes that immediately focused on the injured Kethvar. For a moment, they simply stared at each other across the species divide. "My God," the human whispered, her voice filled with something Zarathek couldn't identify.
"What did they do to you?"
Dr. Elena Vasquez approached slowly, her hands visible and empty of weapons. Her medical scanner beeped rapidly as she ran it over Zarathek's form, and the alien could see her expression growing more grave with each reading. Severe internal hemorrhaging, spinal trauma, collapsed lung, massive tissue damage, Elena muttered to herself. "How are you even still conscious?" Zarathek managed to croak out a single word in broken standard. "Why?" Elena paused in her scanning, meeting the alien's amber gaze directly. "Because you're hurt and I'm a doctor. That's all that matters right now." Those simple words hit Zarathek harder than any weapon ever had. In all her cycles of life through war and peace, she had never encountered such uncomplicated compassion from a supposed enemy. As darkness crept in at the edges of her vision, she wondered if perhaps she had been wrong about humans all along. Elena worked with practiced efficiency, her hands steady despite the unprecedented situation. She had treated dozens of species during her time as a frontier medic, but never a Kethvar. Everything she knew about their anatomy came from theoretical xenobiology courses and classified military briefings that painted them as savage killers. The reality before her was starkly different. Zarathek was clearly a sentient being in terrible pain, her intelligent eyes tracking Elena's movements with wariness but no hostility. The wolf-like alien's injuries were extensive and would have killed most species hours ago. That she was still alive spoke to incredible resilience and willpower. "Marcus, I need you to prep the surgical bay immediately," Elena called to her assistant. "Full trauma setup and break out the universal blood substitute." "Lots of it." "Elena, are you sure about this?" Marcus Chen's voice carried through the comm, hesitant. "I mean, it's a Kethvar. Command's orders were explicit about enemy combatants." "She's dying, Marcus. She's not a threat to anyone." Elena continued her examination, noting the way Zarathek's breathing was becoming more labored. "Besides, look at this ship. It's a scout vessel unarmed. This isn't a warrior, it's a refugee." Elena had seen enough battlefield injuries to recognize the blast patterns on Zarathek's body. These weren't combat wounds from ship-to-ship fighting. They were the result of close-range explosions, the kind that happened when someone was caught in a bombing or terrorist attack. The scarring patterns were consistent with human plasma charges. "The shrapnel wounds are from our weapons," Elena said quietly, more to herself than to her patient. "Someone did this with human military hardware." Zarathek's ears twitched at the words, and she managed to focus her gaze on Elena's face. With tremendous effort, she whispered, "Kepler, station, peace to talks." Elena's blood ran cold. She remembered the news reports from 3 weeks ago. A terrorist attack on a diplomatic conference, perpetrated by human supremacist extremists. The official reports had claimed no alien survivors, but here was living proof that the military had been wrong. Or worse, had lied. "You were at the peace summit," Elena said, not a question but a statement. "You were trying to end the war." Zarathek's response was barely audible. "Peck. All dead. Only me." The simple words carried a weight of grief that transcended species barriers. Elena had lost colleagues before, knew the hollow ache of being the sole survivor. But she couldn't imagine losing everyone at once, especially during what should have been a peaceful negotiation. "I'm going to help you," Elena said firmly, injecting a dose of emergency stimulants into Zarathek's arm. "But I need to move you to my ship. The surgery is beyond what I can do here." Zarathek's eyes widened in what Elena recognized as fear. The alien tried to pull away, using what little strength remained to her. Elena realized the problem immediately. To Zarathek, being taken aboard a human ship might seem like capture. the beginning of imprisonment or torture. "I swear to you by my medical oath," Elena said, speaking slowly and clearly. "I will not harm you. I will not turn you over to the military. I'm going to save your life and then you're free to go wherever you choose." The Kethvar studied Elena's face intently, her alien senses apparently reading the human sincerity. After a long moment, she gave a barely perceptible nod. Moving Zarathek proved challenging. The alien was larger than most humans, her body dense with muscle and bone adapted for a high-gravity world. Marcus had to help carry the stretcher, and both humans were breathing hard by the time they reached the Hippocrates medical bay. Elena's ship was a converted corvette, equipped with the best medical technology that civilian credits could buy. The surgical suite was small but sophisticated, capable of handling most traumas that frontier worlds could dish out. She'd never expected to use it on an alien whose physiology was considered classified information. "Her blood chemistry is completely different," Marcus reported, running samples through the analyzer. "The universal substitute is helping, but it's not a perfect match. Her oxygen carrying capacity is much higher than baseline human. High gravity adaptation," Elena noted, prepping the surgical field. "Probably explains the bone density too. Marcus, I need you to monitor her neural activity. If her brainwave patterns start fluctuating, we might be doing more harm than good." The surgery was the most challenging of Elena's career. Kethvar anatomy was similar enough to mammalian norms that her training applied, but different enough that every incision was a calculated risk. The alien's healing factor was remarkable. Injuries that should have been fatal were already showing signs of natural repair. Hours passed in focused concentration. Elena removed dozens of shrapnel fragments, reconstructed damaged organs, and used biogel to repair the spinal trauma. Throughout it all, Zarathek's vital signs remained surprisingly stable, as if her body was fighting alongside Elena's efforts. "She's remarkable," Marcus whispered during a brief break. "I've never seen anything like her cellular regeneration rate. It's like her body is designed to survive impossible injuries." "Evolutionary pressure," Elena replied, carefully repairing a torn artery. "Kethvar homeworld is supposed to be extremely dangerous. Only the toughest survive to breeding age." As dawn broke on the ship's chronometer, Elena finally stepped back from the surgical table. Zarathek was stable, her breathing deep and regular. The wolf-like alien would live, though full recovery would take weeks. "What now?" Marcus asked, cleaning up the surgical instruments. "We can't exactly drop her off at the nearest starbase. She'd be arrested the moment someone scanned her." Elena considered the problem. The war between humans and Kethvar had made any peaceful contact virtually impossible. Both sides shot first and asked questions later. But she couldn't abandon a patient, especially one who had been the victim of her own species' extremism. "We head for the neutral zone," Elena decided. "There are traitors out there who don't care about the war, only profit. Someone will take her where she needs to go." Zarathek stirred on the table, her amber eyes opening slowly. When she saw Elena standing nearby, her expression shifted from confusion to something that might have been gratitude. "Why?" she asked again, the same question as before but with different meaning now. Elena sat down beside the medical table, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "Because someone needs to prove that not all humans are monsters. And maybe, just maybe, you can prove to your people that not all of us are your enemies." For the first time since the surgery began, Zarathek's lips pulled back in what Elena realized was a smile. It showed sharp teeth but carried no threat, only weary hope. "Perhaps," Zarathek said, her voice stronger now, "the war does not have to be forever." 3 days into their journey toward the neutral zone, Zarathek was walking. Elena had expected weeks of bed rest, but the Kethvar's recovery rate defied every medical textbook she'd ever studied. The alien moved carefully, favoring her left side where the spinal repairs were still healing, but she was mobile and alert. "Your people heal remarkably fast," Elena observed, running her daily scans. On a human, these injuries would require months of rehabilitation. Zarathek flexed her claws experimentally, testing her motor control. "Vorthek Prime is not kind to the weak. Those who cannot heal quickly from wounds do not survive to pass on their genes. Evolution is a harsh teacher." Elena had learned much about Kethvar biology over the past few days, but more importantly, she'd learned about Zarathek as an individual. The alien was intelligent, curious, and possessed a dry sense of humor that caught Elena off guard. She was nothing like the savage predator described in human military briefings. Tell me about your world, Elena said, settling into a chair beside the recovery bed. What's it really like? Zarathek's ears perked forward. A sign Elena had learned indicated interest or pleasure. Vorthek Prime has 2 moons and gravity twice what you experience on most human worlds. The forests are vast and deep, with trees that reach toward the sky like cathedral spires. My pack's territory included the northern highlands where the aurora dances every night in colors your eyes cannot see. It sounds beautiful, Elena said softly. It is, or was? Zarathek's expression darkened. The war has come to our homeworld now. Human bombardments have scarred the forests. Many of the old hunting grounds are radioactive waste. My people have been driven into underground bunkers, no longer free to run beneath open sky. Elena felt a stab of guilt, knowing that her own species was responsible for that destruction. Is that why you were at the peace summit? To try to stop the bombing? Yes, though many of my people called me foolish for believing humans could be reasoned with. The military council said your species knows only violence and conquest. They said trying to negotiate was weakness. Zarathek looked directly at Elena. Perhaps they were wrong about some things. Marcus knocked on the medical bay door before entering. Elena, we've got a problem. Long-range sensors are picking up a patrol fleet heading our way. 3 human destroyers running full military transponders. Elena's heart sank. A military patrol this deep in contested space could only mean one thing. They were hunting for something. Or someone. How long until they intercept us? She asked. 6 hours, maybe less if they go to maximum burn. Zarathek had gone very still, her predator instincts clearly sensing danger. They hunt for me, she said matter-of-factly. Someone must have detected the energy signature from my ship before you rescued me. We can hide you, Elena said quickly. Seal you in one of the cargo holds, modify the life support readings. No. Zarathek's voice was firm. I will not bring harm to those who saved my life. When they board your ship, I will surrender myself. Like hell you will, Elena snapped, surprising herself with her vehemence. I didn't put you back together just to watch you get executed by some trigger-happy admiral. Zarathek tilted her head, studying Elena with those penetrating amber eyes. You would risk your life for an enemy alien? Your own military will consider you a traitor. You're not my enemy, Elena said simply. You're my patient. And I don't abandon my patients. Marcus was checking his instruments nervously. Elena, there's something else. I've been monitoring military communication channels. There's chatter about a missing medical ship. Our medical ship. Apparently, we failed to report in when scheduled. Elena closed her eyes, realizing the magnitude of their situation. By saving Zarathek, they had technically gone AWOL from their assigned patrol route. The military would assume they'd been captured or destroyed. Finding them with a live Kethvar aboard would be interpreted as collaboration with the enemy. Options? She asked. We could dump her escape pod and claim we found it drifting, Marcus suggested reluctantly. Say she died before we could help. No, both Elena and Zarathek said simultaneously. Then we run, Elena decided. Change course for the neutral zone, maximum burn. Maybe we can reach trader space before they catch us. Elena, Marcus said quietly. Our engines can't outrun military destroyers. They'll catch us long before we reach safety. Zarathek stood slowly, moving with careful dignity despite her injuries. There is another option. My ship's communication array was damaged but not destroyed. If we can repair it, I can contact my people. A Kethvar fleet could provide escort to neutral territory. That would mean calling more warships into human space, Marcus pointed out. It could start a major battle. Or, Zarathek said thoughtfully, it could provide an opportunity for the first peaceful contact between our species since the war began. Elena considered the proposal. It was incredibly risky, but every alternative seemed to lead to capture or death. Can you guarantee your ships won't fire first? I am Navigation Pack Leader Zarathek of the Northern Highlands, daughter of War Leader Morthek the Starbreaker. My word carries weight with the fleet commanders. If I tell them you are under pack protection, they will honor that bond. The concept of pack protection was something Elena had read about in xenoanthropology studies. It was supposedly the highest form of loyalty in Kethvar culture, reserved for those who had saved a pack member's life. To violate it was considered the worst form of dishonor. How do we repair your communication array? Elena asked. The damaged components are in my ship's engineering section. With your tools and Marcus's technical skills, it should be possible. Marcus looked skeptical. Elena, this is insane. We're talking about facilitating communication between enemy fleets. That's treason by any definition. So is harboring an enemy alien, Elena pointed out. We crossed that line days ago. The question now is whether we trust Zarathek enough to bet our lives on her word. Elena looked at the Kethvar, remembering the gratitude in those alien eyes when she'd first offered help, remembering the way Zarathek had shared stories of her homeworld, the grief in her voice when she spoke of her dead pack members. This was not a savage beast but a person, someone capable of honor and loyalty. Do it, Elena decided. Marcus, get your tools and meet us at Zarathek's ship. We're going to try something that's either very brave or very stupid. In my experience, Zarathek said with what Elena was learning to recognize as her particular brand of humor, those two things are often the same. As they prepared to cross back to the damaged scout ship, Elena's hands were steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. She was about to help facilitate first contact between enemy fleets, with nothing but faith in an alien's word to protect them from being blown apart by either side. But looking at Zarathek, seeing the determined set of her shoulders and the intelligence in her eyes, Elena felt oddly confident. Sometimes, she thought, the most important medical procedures happened outside the operating room. Sometimes healing relationships between species required the same careful attention as healing damaged organs. The next few hours would determine whether her diagnosis was correct or whether her compassion had doomed them all. The repairs took longer than expected. Zarathek's ship had suffered more damage than initially apparent, with critical circuits fused throughout the communication array. Marcus worked with impressive skill, his engineering background proving invaluable as he traced damaged pathways and jury-rigged replacements from salvaged components. The quantum resonance chamber is completely shot, Marcus reported, his voice muffled as he worked inside an access panel. But I think I can bypass it using the secondary array from Elena's ship. Zarathek watched his work with professional interest. Your technical skills are impressive. Among my people you would be honored as a ship singer, one who makes the metal vessels sing with life. Ship singer? Marcus paused in his work. That sounds like a position of respect. The highest technical rank in our fleet hierarchy, Zarathek confirmed. We believe that ships are living things and only those with the gift can truly communicate with their spirits. Elena found the cultural exchange fascinating, but her attention was focused on the tactical display. The human patrol fleet was now only 4 hours away and had increased to maximum burn. Whoever commanded those ships was very motivated to reach this position quickly. There, Marcus announced with satisfaction. The array is operational. Not pretty, but it should work. Zarathek moved to the communication console, her clawed fingers dancing over controls designed for her species' physiology. The alien script that appeared on the screen was incomprehensible to Elena, flowing symbols that seemed to shift and change as she watched. I am broadcasting on emergency frequencies, Zarathek explained. This message will reach any Kethvar ships within 3 light hours. If my pack sister Vellani still commands the patrol squadron in this sector, she will respond. They waited in tense silence for several minutes before the communication system crackled to life. An alien voice responded in the Kethvar language, a series of growls and howls that somehow conveyed complex meaning. Elena was surprised to realize she could pick out emotional undertones, surprise, concern, and what might have been joy. Zarathek's ears perked forward as she responded rapidly in her own language. The conversation continued for several minutes, growing increasingly animated. Finally, she turned to Elena with an expression of mixed relief and apprehension. Vellani is coming with 2 heavy cruisers and a squadron of fighters, but she brings troubling news. The attack on Kepler Station was not carried out by human extremists alone. There was a Kethvar faction involved, one that wants the war to continue. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. What do you mean? My pack sister says that intelligence sources have identified a collaboration between human supremacists and the Kethvar faction known as the Iron Claw. Both groups benefit from continued conflict and fear any move toward peace. Marcus stopped his equipment check, staring at Zarathek in shock. You're saying your own people were involved in bombing the peace summit? Not my people, Zarathek's voice carried a growl of anger. Traitors and war profiteers who care more for power than the future of either species. They allowed the human extremists to obtain Kethvar weapon signatures, making the attack look like it came from both sides. The implications were staggering. If what Zarathek said was true, then the terrorist attack had been a false flag operation designed to prevent peace negotiations. Both species had been manipulated into continued warfare by their own extremist factions. "Can you prove this?" Elena asked. "The evidence is in my ship's data cores," Zarathek said. "I was investigating suspicious weapon transfers when the attack occurred. The information I gathered could expose the entire conspiracy, but only if it reaches the right people on both sides." Elena's tactical display chimed urgently. The human patrol fleet had changed course and was now on a direct intercept vector. Estimated time to arrival, 2 hours and 15 minutes. Your pack sisters' ships? How long until they arrive? 3 hours, Zarathek admitted. Perhaps longer if they encounter resistance. So the human fleet will reach us first. Elena ran calculations in her head. We need to delay them somehow, buy time for the Kethvar ships to arrive. I could transmit my surrender, Zarathek suggested. Tell them I'm wounded and request medical evacuation. It might slow their approach. No, Elena said firmly. We stick together. If anyone's going to talk to that fleet, it should be me. I'm the ranking medical officer here, and technically this is a humanitarian mission. Marcus looked dubious. Elena, the moment they detect Kethvar life signs aboard our ship, they're going to assume we've been captured or compromised. They might open fire without even trying to communicate. Elena was about to respond when her communication system activated. A crisp military voice filled the channel. Medical frigate Hippocrates, this is Admiral Harrison aboard the destroyer Retribution. You are ordered to heave to and prepare for immediate boarding. Failure to comply will result in your destruction. Elena exchanged glances with her companions. The tone left no room for negotiation, and Admiral Harrison's reputation for ruthlessness was well known throughout the fleet. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez aboard the Hippocrates, she responded. We are conducting a medical emergency operation and cannot comply with boarding procedures at this time. Dr. Vasquez, you failed to report in as scheduled and have deviated from your assigned patrol route. Intelligence suggests you may have encountered hostile forces. State your current status immediately. Elena took a deep breath, knowing her next words would determine all their fates. Admiral, I am treating a critically wounded patient who requires my immediate attention. I am operating under Medical Emergency Protocol 7, which supersedes normal military procedures. There was a long pause before Harrison responded. Doctor, what is the nature of your patient's injuries and what species are you treating? The direct question hung in the air like a challenge. Elena could lie, claim she was treating human survivors from a transport wreck. But if they boarded and found Zarathek, the deception would be exposed immediately. Worse, it would destroy any chance of establishing trust between the approaching fleets. Admiral, Elena said carefully, I am treating a survivor from the Kepler station attack, someone who possesses critical intelligence about the terrorist operation. Another pause, longer this time. Dr. Vasquez, are you saying you have a Kethvar aboard your vessel? I am saying, Elena replied with conviction, that I have a patient who was nearly killed by the same extremists who bombed the peace summit. Someone who has evidence that could prevent future attacks. Doctor, you are in violation of standing orders regarding enemy combatants. Maintain your current position and prepare for immediate boarding. Any attempt to resist will be considered an act of treason. Elena looked at Zarathek, who had been listening to the exchange with growing tension. The alien's amber eyes met hers with understanding and resignation. Villani's ships are still an hour away, Zarathek said quietly. I will not allow you to be branded a traitor for my sake. Perhaps it is time for me to face human justice. Not yet, Elena said with determination. We're going to try something different. She activated the ship's general communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies. If she was going to make a stand, she wanted everyone to hear it, human and Kethvar alike. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez of the medical frigate Hippocrates. 3 days ago, I found a dying alien in a damaged ship. a victim of the same terrorist attack that killed innocent beings at Kepler Station. I could have left her to die alone in space. Instead, I chose to honor my medical oath and save a life, regardless of species. Elena's voice grew stronger as she continued. The being I rescued is not a warrior or a spy. She is a survivor carrying evidence that could expose the truth about who really bombed the peace summit. If we are going to end this war, we need to start by choosing compassion over hatred, truth over propaganda. The channel fell silent. Elena held her breath, wondering if her words had reached anyone willing to listen, or if she had simply signed their death warrants. When Admiral Harrison's voice returned, it carried a note she hadn't heard before: uncertainty. Dr. Vasquez, you have placed me in an extremely difficult position. Stand by while I consult with higher command. Elena allowed herself a small smile. She had bought them time, though how much remained to be seen. In the distance, alien ships were racing toward a rendezvous that could either mark the beginning of peace negotiations or the start of the war's bloodiest battle. The waiting was the hardest part. For 43 minutes, Elena's ship hung in space between two approaching fleets, each capable of destroying them in seconds. The tactical display showed the human destroyers maintaining their intercept course while Velani's Kethvar ships approached. From the opposite direction, Zarathek spent the time preparing data packets from her ship's memory cores, organizing the evidence she'd gathered about the Ironclaw conspiracy. Elena watched her work with growing amazement at the scope of what the alien had uncovered. Weapon serial numbers, communication intercepts, financial transfers, Zarathek explained as she compiled the files. The Ironclaw has been selling military hardware to human extremist groups for over a standard year. In return, they receive intelligence about human fleet movements and targets for terrorist attacks. Both sides have been played, Marcus said, reviewing the data. Every major attack in the last year shows signs of this collaboration. No wonder peace negotiations kept failing. Someone was sabotaging them from the beginning. Elena studied the evidence with a growing sense of outrage. Thousands had died on both sides while extremist factions profited from the bloodshed. The attack on Kepler Station had been designed specifically to eliminate moderate voices calling for peace. Your pack was targeted because you were succeeding, Elena realized. The negotiations were actually working. Yes, Zarathek's ears drooped with grief. We had reached preliminary agreements on prisoner exchanges and civilian shipping routes. Another few days and we might have arranged a formal ceasefire. The communication system crackled back to life, interrupting their conversation. Admiral Harrison's voice carried new tension. Dr. Vasquez, I have received updated orders from Fleet Command. You are to surrender the alien combatant immediately for interrogation and transfer to military detention. Elena's heart sank. She had hoped for more time, but the military was clearly unwilling to risk the situation escalating further. Admiral, with respect, this being is not a combatant. She's a survivor of a terrorist attack who possesses critical intelligence about... Doctor, I am not going to debate this matter. You have 30 minutes to comply or I will order my ships to fire on your vessel. The transmission ended with a sharp click, leaving them in ominous silence. Elena looked at her companions, seeing her own desperation reflected in their faces. How far out are the Kethvar ships? Marcus asked. Zarathek checked her sensors. 28 minutes at current approach speed. Felani is pushing her engines beyond safety limits, but she cannot arrive before the human deadline. Elena made a decision that surprised even herself. Then we don't wait for rescue. We go to them. Elena, that's suicide, Marcus protested. The moment we move toward the Kethvar fleet, Harrison will interpret it as defection. He'll blow us apart before we travel 1,000 kilometers. Not if we're broadcasting the evidence, Elena said, her mind racing through possibilities. Zarathek, can you transmit the Ironclaw data on all frequencies simultaneously? Make it impossible for either side to ignore? Yes, but the transmission will take several minutes to complete. We would need to remain stationary during the broadcast. Then we make our stand here, Elena decided. We broadcast the truth and hope it reaches people willing to listen before Harrison decides to silence us permanently. Zarathek's amber eyes studied Elena's face intently. You understand that this action will likely result in your death? Your own species will consider you a traitor. Some things are more important than personal survival, Elena replied. If this evidence can stop the war, save lives on both sides, then it's worth the risk. Marcus was frantically checking their defensive systems, though Elena knew their medical frigate was virtually helpless against military destroyers. Elena, I need you to know that I think you're completely insane, but I also think you're right. If we don't try to stop this madness, who will? Elena felt a surge of gratitude for her assistant's loyalty. Zarathek, begin the transmission. Send everything to both fleets simultaneously. The alien's claws moved swiftly over her communication controls. Within moments, data streams were flowing from their ship to every vessel within transmission range. Financial records, weapon manifests, recorded conversations between Iron Claw leaders and human extremists. A comprehensive catalog of betrayal and manipulation. Transmission in progress, Zarathek reported. Estimated completion time, 6 minutes 40 seconds. Elena activated her own communication system, broadcasting on emergency frequencies. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez aboard the medical frigate Hippocrates. We are transmitting critical intelligence regarding the conspiracy behind the Kepler station attack. This evidence proves that extremist factions from both species have been collaborating to prevent peace negotiations. Admiral Harrison's response was immediate and furious. Dr. Vasquez, cease your transmission immediately and surrender the enemy alien. This is your final warning. Admiral, Elena continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I urge you to review the data we're transmitting. The being aboard my ship is not your enemy. She's a victim of the same conspiracy that has manipulated both our species into this war. On the tactical display, Elena watched the human destroyers change formation, moving into attack positions. The Kethvar ships were still 15 minutes away, too far to provide any assistance. Zarathek looked up from her console. Elena, I am receiving communications from Villani's ship. She has reviewed the preliminary data and is requesting permission to share it with her fleet commanders in real time. Do it, Elena said without hesitation. I am also detecting communication traffic between the human ships, Zarathek added. Your Admiral Harrison appears to be arguing with someone. Elena allowed herself a moment of hope. Perhaps the evidence was reaching people willing to listen. Officers who could see beyond the propaganda and hatred that had driven the war. The communication system activated again, but this time it wasn't Harrison's voice that came through. A new speaker, older and carrying the authority of high command. This is Fleet Admiral Chen aboard the battlecruiser Yorktown. Dr. Vasquez, I have been monitoring your transmissions and reviewing the intelligence data. Can you confirm the authenticity of these records? Elena's heart leaped. Fleet Admiral Chen was known as a moderate voice in the military hierarchy. Someone who had questioned the wisdom of total war with the Kethvar. Admiral Chen, the being who provided this intelligence, nearly died gathering it. She lost her entire unit trying to expose this conspiracy. I stake my career and my life on the authenticity of these records. Doctor, I want to speak directly with your patient. Can you arrange a communication link? Elena looked at Zarathek, who nodded gravely. The alien activated the visual communication system, allowing her image to appear on screens throughout both fleets. It would be the first time many humans had seen a living Kethvar outside of combat footage. I am Navigation Pack Leader Zarathek of the Northern Highlands, she said clearly, speaking in accented but precise standard. I offer my testimony before both fleets regarding the crimes committed against our species. The silence that followed was profound. Elena could imagine the shock among human crews seeing their supposed enemy speaking with dignity and intelligence, requesting justice rather than demanding revenge. Fleet Admiral Chen's voice returned, thoughtful and careful. Pack Leader Zarathek, can you provide additional verification of these intelligence files? I can provide access codes to Iron Claw communication networks and the location of weapon stockpiles used in the conspiracy. I can also identify the human extremist leaders who participated in the attack on Kepler Station. Another pause then. Admiral Harrison, order your ships to stand down. I am taking operational command of this situation. Elena could hear Harrison's protest over the open channel. Sir, this could be an elaborate deception. We cannot trust. Admiral Harrison, I have reviewed the evidence and it correlates with intelligence reports that have been classified above your clearance level. Stand down immediately. On the other side of the approaching battle line, new voices were joining the communication network. Kethvar fleet commanders were broadcasting their own confirmations of the evidence, sharing intelligence that matched Zarathek's files. Elena realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. real-time intelligence sharing between enemy fleets, with her medical ship serving as the unlikely bridge between them. The transmission completed with a soft chime. 6 minutes and 40 seconds of data that could change the course of an interstellar war. All evidence successfully transmitted to both fleets, Zarathek reported. Velani reports that her commanders are requesting immediate communication with human fleet leadership. Elena allowed herself to breathe for the first time in what felt like hours. They had done it. Against all odds, they had managed to get the truth into the right hands. Whether it would be enough to stop the war remained to be seen. But at least both sides now had the information they needed to make informed decisions. Dr. Vasquez, Fleet Admiral Chen's voice carried a note of respect that hadn't been there before. I believe you may have just prevented a catastrophic escalation of this conflict. Stand by for further instructions. Elena looked at Zarathek and Marcus, seeing her own exhausted relief here. They had gambled everything on the hope that truth would prevail over hatred, and somehow, impossibly, they seemed to have won. The neutral zone had never hosted anything like the gathering that took place 3 weeks later. Representatives from both the Human Colonial Authority and the Kethvar Confederacy met aboard the civilian station New Geneva, a converted mining platform that had declared independence from both governments years earlier. Elena stood at the observation deck, watching as human and Kethvar ships maintained careful formations around the station. The sight would have been unthinkable a month ago. Enemy fleets sharing the same space without weapons armed, their crews working together to establish secure communication networks. The irony is not lost on me, Zarathek said, joining Elena at the viewport. The alien had recovered completely from her injuries, her silver fur restored to its former luster. A place that neither of our species claims has become the foundation for peace between us. Elena smiled, remembering how terrifying she had once found Zarathek's presence. Now the alien felt like an old friend, someone who had shared the crucible of near death and emerged transformed by the experience. How are the negotiations proceeding? Elena asked. Better than expected, Zarathek replied. Your Fleet Admiral Chen and War Leader Morthek have found surprising common ground. Both are old soldiers who have grown weary of sending young warriors to die for the ambitions of extremists. The evidence they had transmitted had done more than expose the Iron Claw conspiracy. It had revealed the extent to which both species had been manipulated by their own radical factions. Human supremacist cells had been feeding intelligence to Iron Claw operatives while receiving advanced alien weapons technology in return. The partnership had been profitable for both groups while devastating for everyone else. Marcus tells me they've arrested over 200 conspirators on the human side, Elena said, and the Iron Claw leadership has been stripped of rank and exiled from Kethvar space, Zarathek added. Velani leads the hunt for those who escaped justice. They will be found. Elena had testified before the Joint Commission investigating the conspiracy, sharing her experience of finding Zarathek and uncovering the truth. The Commission's report had been scathing, documenting years of manipulation and false flag operations designed to prevent any peaceful resolution to the conflict. Dr. Vasquez, a familiar voice called from behind them. Elena turned to see Fleet Admiral Chen approaching, accompanied by a massive Kethvar, whose scarred muzzle and commanding presence marked him as a senior military leader. Admiral Chen, War Leader Morthek, Elena said, offering the respectful nod that had become standard protocol for interspecies greetings. Doctor, I wanted to thank you personally, War Leader Morthek said in heavily accented standard. Your courage in saving my daughter's life has given both our species a chance for peace. Elena blinked in surprise. Daughter? Zarathek's ears flicked in amusement. I had not mentioned it. War Leader Morthek is my father, though among our people, family relationships do not grant special privileges in military service. Your daughter's actions exposed a conspiracy that threatened both our civilizations, Admiral Chen said. The intelligence she gathered has allowed us to root out extremist cells that might have perpetuated this war for decades. Elena felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had started as a simple medical rescue. I just did what any doctor would do. No, War Leader Morthek said firmly. Most humans would have left a Kethvar to die in space. Your choice to value life over species loyalty changed the course of history. The negotiations had indeed been progressing with remarkable speed. Both sides were eager to end a war that had cost them dearly, while benefiting only the extremists who had engineered it. Preliminary agreements had already been reached on prisoner exchanges, civilian shipping routes, and joint operations against remaining terrorist cells. "There is something else," Admiral Chen said. "The Joint Commission has recommended the establishment of a new organization, a mixed-species medical corps dedicated to providing humanitarian aid in contested regions. They've asked you to head the human contingent." Elena looked at Zarathek, who was practically vibrating with barely contained excitement. "Let me guess. You've been asked to lead the Kethvar medical team?" "Indeed," Zarathek confirmed. "It would seem our partnership has impressed the leadership of both species. They believe we can serve as a model for future cooperation." The offer was tempting, but Elena had concerns. "What about the resistance?" "There are still people on both sides who oppose any form of cooperation, which is precisely why this program is needed," War Leader Morthek said. "Every life saved together, every joint operation that succeeds, weakens the argument that our species cannot coexist." Elena considered the proposal. She had spent her career treating humans on frontier worlds, never imagining she might one day work alongside alien colleagues. But her experience with Zarathek had opened her eyes to possibilities she'd never considered. "What would Marcus think about transferring to an interspecies medical unit?" she asked. "Marcus has already submitted his application," Admiral Chen said with a smile. "He's quite enthusiastic about the technical challenges of designing equipment that works for both human and Kethvar physiology. The first joint medical station is already under construction," Zarathek added. "A converted asteroid base in the neutral zone, equipped with facilities for treating both species. We could be operational within 6 months." Elena looked out at the ship surrounding New Geneva, human and Kethvar vessels working in coordination for the first time in history. It was a fragile peace, held together by mutual exhaustion and the shocking revelation of how thoroughly they had been manipulated. But it was a beginning. "There's one condition," Elena said finally. "I want Hippocrates to be part of the program. That ship saved your life, Zarathek. It seems appropriate that it should continue saving lives." "Agreed," both military leaders said simultaneously, then looked at each other with what might have been the beginning of mutual respect. As the meeting concluded and the various officials departed, Elena and Zarathek remained at the observation deck. The view had changed subtly. The ship formations looked less like opposing fleets and more like a combined force preparing for a shared mission. "Do you think it will work?" Elena asked. "This peace we're trying to build?" Zarathek was quiet for a long moment, her amber eyes reflecting the distant stars. "On Vorthak Prime there is an old saying, the strongest pack is one that includes former enemies. Perhaps it applies to species as well as individuals." Elena found comfort in that thought. She had started this journey as a simple frontier doctor, never expecting to become a bridge between worlds. But sometimes, she reflected, the most important healing happened not in operating rooms but in the spaces between hearts and minds, where understanding could grow from the smallest acts of compassion. "When do we start?" she asked. "The construction crews are already at work," Zarathek replied. "But I believe we started the moment you chose to save a dying alien rather than leave her to fate." Elena nodded, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The war between their species might be ending, but their work was just beginning. In a galaxy torn by hatred and mistrust, they would prove that healing was possible. One patient, one partnership, one choice at a time. The future stretched before them, uncertain but full of possibility. For the first time in years, Elena felt genuine hope. 5 years after the first meeting at New Geneva, Elena stood in the main medical bay of Sanctuary Station, watching her mixed-species team work together with practiced efficiency. The converted asteroid had grown far beyond its original design, now housing the largest interspecies medical facility in known space. "Incoming trauma alert," Marcus announced from the communications console. "Transport vessel collision in the shipping lanes. Multiple casualties, both human and Kethvar." Elena quickly assessed the situation as data flowed across her screens. A civilian transport carrying human refugees had collided with a Kethvar cargo hauler, resulting in hull breaches and serious injuries on both ships. 5 years ago, such an incident might have sparked another armed confrontation. Now it was simply another emergency requiring their coordinated response. "Dr. Velterin, take Trauma Bay 3. Elena called to one of her Kethvar colleagues. Dr. Park, prep Trauma Bay 1 for human casualties. I'll coordinate triage as the patients arrive. The efficiency of their response would have amazed the younger Elena, who had first encountered Zarathek drifting in space. Humans and Kethvar worked side by side, their different physiologies and capabilities complementing each other perfectly. Kethvar strength and endurance paired with human dexterity and precision created medical teams, capable of handling emergencies that would challenge. Single-species crews. Zarathek emerged from the research wing, her commander's insignia marking her promotion to Director of Kethvar Medical Operations. She moved with the confidence of someone who had found her true calling, her pack leader instincts perfectly suited to coordinating complex medical responses. How many casualties? She asked, immediately falling into their established emergency protocols. 17 humans, 11 Kethvar, Elena replied. The transport captain is critical. They stayed at their post to coordinate the evacuation while the ship was breaking apart. Noble but foolish. Zarathek observed with a note of approval that Elena had learned to recognize. Such courage deserves our finest efforts. The first shuttles arrived within minutes, their medical compartments filled with injured beings from both species. Elena watched her team spring into action, human and Kethvar medics working together without hesitation. The sight still filled her with wonder, remembering how impossible such cooperation had seemed during the war. The human transport captain was indeed critical, suffering from decompression injuries and severe trauma from debris impact. Helena led the surgical team personally, assisted by Dr. Veltarin, whose four-armed physiology allowed her to maintain multiple instrument arrays simultaneously. Lung collapse on the left side, Elena reported. Dr. Veltran, can you maintain pressure while I repair the tear? Affirmative, the Kethvar surgeon replied in the careful standard that had become the medical corps' working language. Human lung tissue is remarkably resilient. This individual should make full recovery. As Elena worked, she reflected on how much had changed since that desperate day, when she'd first tried to save Zarathek's life. The Joint Medical Corps had grown from a handful of volunteers to over 3,000 personnel, across 12 stations. More importantly, it had become a symbol of what cooperation between species could achieve. The success had not come without challenges. There had been terrorist attacks from remnant extremist groups, political pressure from both governments, and the daily difficulties of coordinating between species with fundamentally different biology and psychology. But each crisis overcome had strengthened the bonds between human and Kethvar personnel. Surgery complete, Elena announced 2 hours later. Captain Martinez should make a full recovery. She emerged from the operating theater to find Zarathek waiting with a status report. All casualties had been stabilized, with only minor complications from the species' compatibility challenges that had once seemed insurmountable. The cargo hauler captain wishes to speak with you, Zarathek said. Captain Morrison is quite concerned about the human patients. Elena found the Kethvar captain in Recovery Bay 7, his leg immobilized but his mind clearly alert. Captain Morrison was typical of the new generation of spacers who had grown up. During the peace, he showed none of the instinctive wariness that older Kethvar displayed around humans. Doctor, he said as Elena approached, I wanted to thank you personally for saving my crew. When the collision occurred, I thought we would all die in space. It's what we do here, Elena replied simply. But I understand your crew was instrumental in coordinating the evacuation. Without your people's efforts, we would have lost many more lives. Captain Morrison's ears flicked with what Elena recognized as modest pride. Humans and Kethvar working together. My father fought in the war. He would be amazed to see such cooperation. Elena knew the feeling. Her own parents had struggled to understand her choice to work with former enemies, though they had eventually come to support her work. The older generation on both sides found the rapid changes difficult to accept, but younger humans and Kethvar had adapted with remarkable speed. Dr. Vasquez, Marcus called from the communications station. You have an incoming priority message from Earth. Chancellor Martinez wants to speak with you directly. Elena was surprised by the contact. The civilian government rarely communicated directly with the medical corps, preferring to work through military channels. She made her way to the secure communication center, where Zarathek was already waiting. Chancellor Martinez, Elena said as the hologram stabilized. How can I assist you? The chancellor was a middle-aged woman whose political career had been built on the successful peace negotiations with the HFY. Her expression carried a mixture of excitement and concern that immediately caught Elena's attention. "Dr. Vasquez, I have remarkable news. We've received a communication from the hegemony sector. First contact with an entirely new species. They call themselves the Vithkar, and they're requesting medical assistance for their colony ship." Elena felt her pulse quicken. First contact situations were always delicate, requiring careful consideration of biological compatibility and cultural sensitivities. What kind of medical assistance do they need? Their message was quite specific. They've encountered a plague that their own medical knowledge cannot cure. They've heard about the joint human-HFY medical corps and specifically requested our assistance. Zarathek leaned forward with interest. A species seeking help from former enemies working together. This could be significant for establishing peaceful relations. "That's exactly what we're hoping," Chancellor Martinez said. "However, there are complications. The Vithkar colony ship is in a contested region where several species maintain territorial claims. Any medical mission would require delicate diplomatic coordination." Elena considered the implications. The Joint Medical Corps had dealt with multi-species emergencies before, but never a first contact situation involving an unknown alien civilization. The challenges would be enormous, but the potential benefits for galactic peace were equally significant. "What do we know about Vithkar physiology?" She asked. "Very little. Their initial communication included basic biological data, but it's unlike anything in our databases. They appear to be silicon-based rather than carbon-based, which presents unique medical challenges." Zarathek's eyes gleamed with the kind of scientific curiosity that Elena had learned to recognize and appreciate. A completely different biochemical foundation. The treatment approaches would need to be revolutionary. "There's something else," Chancellor Martinez continued. "The Vithkar specifically mentioned that they chose to contact us because they observed our medical corps saving lives regardless of species loyalty. They believe that anyone capable of such cooperation might be worthy of trust." Elena felt the weight of that observation. Their work had become more than just medical care. It had become a demonstration that former enemies could not only coexist, but actively work together for the benefit of all. Now that demonstration was being observed by other species, influencing how humanity and the HFY were perceived across the galaxy. "When do we leave?" Elena asked, already knowing she would accept the mission. "The diplomatic preparations will take several weeks. But Dr. Vasquez, I want you to understand the significance of this opportunity. How we handle first contact with the Vithkar could influence relations with dozens of other species who are watching our expansion into their regions." After the communication ended, Elena and Zarathek sat in comfortable silence, contemplating the magnitude of what lay ahead. Their partnership had grown from a desperate medical emergency into something that was shaping the future of interspecies relations. "Are you prepared for another impossible challenge?" Zarathek asked with the subtle humor Elena had grown to love. Elena looked around the medical bay where human and HFY staff continued their work, saving lives and proving every day that cooperation was not only possible, but more effective than competition. They had started with a single dying alien and built something that was changing the galaxy. "With you as my partner," Elena replied, "I think we can handle whatever the universe throws at us." Zarathek's lips pulled back in the toothy smile that had once terrified Elena, but now filled her with confidence. Together they had already achieved the impossible once.